Hi, thank you everyone for coming. Hi. So they told me not to move, but I have a thing and I want to move. Maybe you can't see me very well, I don't know. But I don't think that I will be still here in this spot. Anyway, thank you for coming to my talk, How to Create Satisfactory and Profitable Products for Your Users. And we will talk about UX and UI, UX, user experience, and UI, user interface. We will not talk about code. So if you are here about code or technical stuff, we won't do that here. But we will say how we can create better products for our users. And we will do that by giving some examples. That's the heuristics, the 10 heuristics. You can think about that as 10 tips. And in the end, we will have two parts about the do's and don'ts of UX and the good and the part of UI. Okay, before we get started, again, I'd like to introduce myself. Okay. I'm Eleftheria. I am from here, from Thessaloniki. This is the first time that I talk in Thessaloniki, so it's a big honor for me. I am working at Hashnot. Hashnot is a blogging platform. You can write and read technical articles for free. And I'm a community manager. It's something similar to a developer advocate, or if you are not familiar with this role, you can catch me up on the break. Okay, I'm very active on social media, especially on Twitter. So again, if you have any questions and you're kind of shy here, feel free to email me or find me again on social media. And now I think we can start. First, UX and UI. Wow, sorry. UX stands for user experience and UI, as I said, for user interface. Now, the thing is that you may go, you read an article, you see a tutorial about what these stuff are, but I'm afraid that most of this stuff do a poor job explaining these terms because they see things only from one perspective, and that's usually the perspective of the user. But here, we're not only users, we are also developers, maybe designers, and maybe more stuff as well. So we will try to see these two terms from two different perspectives. Okay, from the perspective of the user, but also from the perspective of the developer/designer. Let's get started. First, I will start with the perspective of the user, because this is a bit easier to understand it. And we have the user interface here. It's what a user do with a product. It's the what. And what taps or clicks on, and the whole experience is localized in a device, maybe in a mobile device, maybe in a laptop, in a computer screen, whatever. On the other hand, user experience is how a user interacts with a product and how a user feels when interacts with a product, what taps on or clicks on. But the whole experience this time is localized in their physical body. So we can see maybe from their face how they are standing, if they like something, if they don't like something, etc. Now let's move on to the perspective of the designer or the developer in our side. And I will start with an analog, because this time it's a bit more complicated. If we take a look at the picture, we will see mainly the tip of the mountain. And it's not only that, if we are a bit more careful, we will notice that beneath that, it's a whole mountain that holds everything together. It's also the sea, it's the cold air, it's the atmosphere, it's everything. So from one hand, user interface is what a user sees and maybe interacts with, but from the other hand, user experience is what he sees along with what he doesn't see, what he interacts with, and what holds everything together. All right, now I think that we have the basic two terms, but we will go in depth. And after that, I will give you my examples. So what UX really is? I will start again from the perspective of the user, and I want you to keep two words here. It's all about satisfaction and ease. We want to make our products to be as satisfactory as possible and as easy as possible. We shouldn't make our user think. And that's the goal. So from the perspective of the user, it can be subjective, meaning does the user connect emotionally? Is he cracking a smile? And on the other hand, it can be subjective. Can they actually do all the things they want to do? Can they do those things fast? Is it easy for them? And how they feel after doing these actions and after doing these steps. I will also give you an example, and I'm pretty sure that you will understand it a little bit better with this example. Let's say that we have a writing sharing app, and we have this app. So, would you prefer one app that doesn't let you save your favorite destination, doesn't show you where you are in real life, or your driver is, or where you're heading, doesn't let you pay with card? Or would you prefer another app, but this time it will show you where you are, it lets you save your favorite destinations, you can do multiple tracks, you can pick up your friends? Which one would you choose? And I'm pretty sure that the answer here is clear. But again, sometimes we have our own products, and because we are the user of the product, we are the coder of the product, we are the designer of the product, we think that we have an awesome product and everything works out fine. But what if we give this product to a user? Will they have the same behavior as we have? And when I say a user, I mean a real user. Like not our best friend, not our developer friend, not our mom. Maybe our ex-partner would be a better case for this example. Okay, so what is UX and why it's so important? I hope that by now you got the feeling why it's important, but it's because its core is about putting people before technology. It's about a focus, and always the focus should be on people and on creating positive experience. And if we have those two things, then the result will come. And it will be a win-win situation, both for our users and for our company. And that's how we make profit. Okay, so what does a UX designer do? We will continue with some more theory, and then I will answer that question. So we have here this gentleman, which is Don Norman. Don Norman is the pioneer of UX. Why, you may ask? Okay, that's because he studied engineering, but then he did a major in psychology. And the different thing with that guy is that he focused on how people interact with products, with technological products. And he was the first one that did that. So he's the pioneer, he started working at Apple, and now we have Apple as it is. Before that guy, of course, we were having the technology, but we didn't have so much of the UI thing. Okay, before we continue, this guy also has some great books. You don't have to be a designer or a UX person in order to understand them. Side note, you can find them for free. This is one that I really like, The Design of Everyday Things. It doesn't talk only about technological things, but about other things as well, and I think that you should give it a try. Now, to answer my original question, which was what does a UX designer do? Oh boy, he does a lot of things. I have here the pyramid with some of those things, and I will start from bottom to top. So we have user research and analysis, content strategy, information architecture, interaction design, and the visual design. If we go to its layer, I'm not going to give you a lot of details because, trust me, these things are huge. But in the user research and analysis, which is the first layer, the first thing that someone should do, is user interviews, user behavior studies, focus groups, and surveys. And when we have those things, we can go to personas, user stories, empathy maps, and customer journeys. And after we have completed these things, or some of those things, we can move on to the content strategy. And here we have writing product copy and micro copy, selecting the right wording and tone, and other stuff. Some people find it boring, but if you start working on them, I'm pretty sure that you will like them. Continuing, we have the information architecture. Again, you can see a lot of details. I'm not going to get through these details, but again, this step is quite crucial because it combines the two previous steps with the next two ones. And the next two ones, it's the ones that the UI designer will work on. So that was a small spoiler alert. Okay, here we have some things such as card sorting, sitemaps, wireframes, user flows, etc. And then we have the interaction design and the visual design. But again, as I said, spoiler alert, we will see those things in a bit as well. By now, we talked about UX, and I hope that you understood what UX is. So now you're ready to move on to UI. All right, when you say UI or when you hear someone talking about UI, user interface and design, most likely you will think about colors, icons, and maybe typography. Am I right? But it's not only that, and I'm here to prove that as well. When we talk about user interface, it can also be audible. Like we have these machines, like Alexa and Siri. We shout to those machines and we get answers. Do you think that this is design? It is, but it's audio design. It still is design, and it still under the umbrella of user interface. We also have something else, and it's that one. Most likely all of you have experienced something similar. This is also UI. I'm not saying that it's perfect, because here the focus is not on colors, it's not on typography, it's not on a fancy button, it's definitely not in animation, but we still have something like that, which is still an example of user interface. Let's go to, let me skip that, because it's why UI is important. I hope that you can understand that as well. So let's go to our pyramid as well. And this time we will focus on the top two layers, the interaction design and the visual design. So yes, interaction design does have those things that I mentioned, like colors, typography, iconography, but it's not only that. I have on the right column the visual design skills. These are the things that a designer should have, and some of those are typography, color theory, iconography, illustration, visual hierarchy, alignment, layout, and a lot more. The list goes on. And then we have the visual design, that here the designer will focus on possible variations of a screen and how it is well put it out there, but also a designer has to make sure and to apply design patterns effectively, create component libraries, establish complete design systems. Some of those things are going to happen from a designer, some of those things are going to happen from a UX person. But now the thing is that sometimes our companies doesn't have a UXer or a designer, and us, the developers, have to do all of those things. Or our boss expects us to do all of those things, but it's a bit difficult, especially we don't have the knowledge to do these things. And I'm here to help you with some tips and examples of how we can improve our products knowing these things. Okay, yeah, don't forget that. Always design for every device. Cool, so we have UX, we have UI, we know the differences, we know the similarities, we know that from the perspective of the user, these two terms can be separable. So one is what you see and the other thing is what you feel. But from the perspective of the designer or the developer, these two things are more connected, because it's what you see alongside with what you don't see and what you feel. Now, let's talk about heuristics, and this is where the examples come. Heuristics, in simple terms, is making decisions with information that you already have. There are many sets of heuristics, but we will only go through the last column, which is the heuristic analysis, and we will do that because it's the easier for us as developers, not as designers, because we are not experts, to make some sense, have some data, and make the best that we can. And of course, in the end, we will have a product that is easy, satisfactory, and profitable. Now, before we begin, some questions that we have to ask ourselves or our team or our managers. The first thing is that we should define the scope of our evaluation. So ask yourself, what do I want to test? We will talk a bit about testing, so what do I want to test with my user or with my product? Know your end user, know about who you are working for, know what you want to present to whom, who is going to use that. Choose your set of heuristics, and we will talk about that in a bit. Set up an evaluation system and identify issues. This is especially if you already have a product and you think that something is not working so well, this is something that you should absolutely do. And analyze and summarize findings, because you may have done a great research, but if you don't go back, analyze those facts and make some new data, then you don't have anything. It's just a waste of time. Okay. Now it's finally time to go to the more practical things, and now it's time to talk about the 10 heuristics, or you can think of that as 10 tips. These tips by no means are coming by me. These tips were manifested by Don Norman and Nielsen in 1995. Okay? Let's start. The first tip is visibility of system status. Imagine opening up your phone. The first thing that you see is the date, the messages, notifications, and stuff like that. What if someone took all those things for you? How would you feel? Maybe kind of naked, like something is missing? Okay, now take that feeling to your product. Your users want to see things. They want to know things. Show them what they want to see. Don't expect that they will know something. Don't expect that they will remember something. Show them the things that they want to see. That's our first tip. The next one is match between the system and the real world. And that started with this geomorphism design. This is when we have something in real life, like a bin, a compass, a folder, and we transfer that design to our application. And that's why we have nowadays in our laptops or phones, whatever, these designs. If you have something very complicated, but we already have that in real life, why not making a design like that? Of course, there are other solutions, but this is one of the simplest one, and something that it won't take us a lot of time to think of. Okay, let's go to the third one, which is user control and freedom. You should always have an emergency exit. Either we want it or not, our users will make mistakes. And we cannot blame the users. Sometimes our users will be in a hurry, sometimes they will just misclick something. So we absolutely want an emergency exit. This can be an undo, an X, a go back, something like that, that the user will be able to recover easily and fast, and they won't need our support. Always make sure that you have that. And that's why you absolutely need your users, because if you go to use your own product and you know it like really well, you won't make any mistakes. So for you, everything is going to be fine. But for your users, this is going to be a hard part. Okay, let's move on to our first tip, which is consistency and standards. And it's one of my favorite tips. I have two. One of them is that, consistency and standards. Just because something is different, it doesn't mean it's super awesome, wow. And sometimes we have some ideas, we think they are great. Maybe for our friends, for my mom, maybe it's great. But again, think about the real users. Just because you have a super awesome idea, I'm sorry to break it for you, but doesn't mean that it's actually perfect. Now, let's go back to some simpler things. If something works fine, don't try to change it. If something is being used by many people, again, don't try to change it. 90–70% of the users' times, they will have it on other apps or products, not yours. So the remaining part, they should be able to use your product very, very easily. Imagine again, like copy-paste. It works everywhere the same. Why would you change it? And that's something universal, but again, there are some smaller examples as well. Let's go to the fifth tip, which is error prevention. As I mentioned, our users will make mistakes, either we want to or not, even if we have the perfect product. they will still find a way to make some mistakes. But something small here is that we actually have two kinds of errors. We have the slips and the mistakes. The slips is the one that I've already talked about. It's about your user will be in a hurry, they will do some misclicks, they will, I don't know, do something that they don't really want, but that's why we talked about the emergency exit, that they will go back, maybe refresh, maybe restore, something like that. Okay, we talked about that. But what about the mistakes? Here is the problem. And the problem is not on our user, the problem is actually on us or on our team. This means that the user is making a mistake because they haven't understand something. Our logic behind that feature is wrong. We haven't provided something correct. So this is more serious, and if we find those issues, we should really take a step back, talk with our team, I don't know, find a solution, and then do something new about it. Okay, let's go to the sixth one, which is recognition rather than recall. We want things to be easy for our users, so we don't want to make them think. This is also a book, Don't Make Me Think. And it's exactly about that. It's about the user experience and how everything for your user should be easy. We have two kinds of memories, recognition and recall. Recognition is when you see something or you don't have to think a lot about something because you already know the answer, you don't have to go back to your memory. But recall is when you have to go back to your memory. And we absolutely don't want that. For example, when we were doing history classes and we have to think of a date, that was a recall. But recognition is maybe you see an image and you can recognize that what that thing is, and how you can implement that in your product is, for example, you could have a field with numbers if they have to fill up a number, a field with dates if they have to fill a date, and something that again will help your user and don't waste their time. So the seventh one is flexibility and efficiency of use. Your users, again, I hope that you have a lot of users in your product, but in that case, that's something really cool, but this means that you will have at least two different types of users and maybe even more. The first type of user is the one that they will use your product for the first time. So they maybe want some more information, maybe they want some things in detail, not so fast. But on the other hand, you will have your experienced or power users, and they will want things to be fast, easy. They want to make sure that they click something and that just they don't have to make any other action. Maybe they want to connect your app with other apps or with other products. They want everything to be fast. So make sure that you have something for everyone, both for the first-time user and the power user, and of course everyone else that is in the middle. Always think about that. And then we have the aesthetic and minimal design, and this is the second favorite tip of mine. Oh my God, people, let's admit that there are some websites that are not really cool, right? I'm not the only one. Tell me I'm not the only one, but we have seen, and I'm pretty sure that you have seen them as well, some websites that you say like, what was she thinking? Like, why is that thing like that? So let's talk a little bit about that. My first tip here, if you want to create a simple website, or let's say even a fancier one, start with white color. Really, don't throw all the colors out there. If you want to have a lot of colors, okay, maybe you can start with 1, 2, and then go to an application or something that says which colors goes with what other colors. Don't just throw things out there. Don't just put animations out there. Even if you coded your own website and you want to show that you're very good with CSS, JavaScript, etc., don't just throw everything in there. The user just wants to go to your website or your product, see something, and then he will click out of it. If you throw so many stuff, you will just make it harder for them. So my very first tip here is use white color. And if you feel super comfortable, then you can move on with other colors as well. And the next tip here is use a bigger font size. Yes, because not everyone has like good eyes. Not everyone can read easily. People, especially if they are not so young, they want to see things clear. And if you develop things only for yourself, that's okay, but probably you don't do that. Probably you're doing for your people. So make it big, make it clear, and let the fancy stuff for someone else. Okay, we don't need those things. Unless you're an expert, but as a developer, and I include myself here, I'm not sure how experts we are. Let's move on with the 9th one, which is help users recognize, diagnose, and recover from errors. We talked about that our users will make errors, but the thing is to help them recover as quickly as possible. And I have here some examples. We absolutely don't want things such as error line something. Even if you are a developer, but you see something like that on someone else's app or product, I'm pretty sure that you won't be able to find the solution. So let's do something different for our product. Maybe you can have, again, I have here an example with photos or images. For example, you can, the people can upload a file. Maybe you could specify what files your product can take. Maybe it's a PDF, but maybe you don't accept Word or Excel or something like that. So always make sure to help your users do things faster and with ease. These are our words: fast, easy, satisfactory, and profitable. Okay, and let's move on to the last one, which is help and documentation. We should strive to have a perfect app, a perfect product, but sometimes some people need some extra help, and that's why we have the help and documentation. This doesn't mean that you should write something big and huge, something with technical terms. In fact, it's the opposite. Try to keep it small. Try not to say too many technical things unless you are doing something for other fellow developers. Otherwise, just keep it small, simple, maybe here and there, put some info, some details, something that it will actually help your user and not something that you did it just to do it and make it out of your head. Okay, these were our 10 tips. Now, we have some more tips. This is going to be a quick one, the do's and don'ts of UX. So let's see some quick tips. Don't assume you know what the user wants. Always test, test, test. And that's why you should have users. Now, a common question here is, okay, where do I find users? And there are multiple of solutions here. One solution is that you can go to your company, but specifically to the people who are not developers, and ask them to utilize your product and observe how they are using it and how fast or slow they are doing the things that you ask them to do. The other solution, which will require some money, is to go to actually some users. You can find them in platforms, and you could go through and explain exactly what you want, so you will have the demographics and everything of the users that you want. But in that case, you will have to pay some money. Don't follow the hippo at the room, and hippo stands for the highest paid person's opinion. Yes, we have our boss, we love our boss, he pays us, but that doesn't mean that we should blindly follow my boss, my manager, whatever. You are in the company that you are, or you're a freelancer, I don't know, because you have something to say, you have an opinion, and that's the time to share it with the others. Do make the time and effort for user research. Don't just create a list of methods to check off. Don't prototype too soon, even if you plan to test it. And do focus on what people do rather than what they say. Focus on what people do. Again, observe them. And if you can only do one thing, do conduct user testing. It's really crucial. Don't overlook existing insight from customer care representatives. So if you have a support system for your app, product, again, whatever, take some time to go through that. Maybe you have like a dedicated support team and they solve these kind of issues, but as a developer, it would be nice to go back and see what people are doing with your products. I very recently had the opportunity to do that, and I saw things that I wouldn't expect them. Again, because we are used in doing things fast, we can't really think how a user thinks. But if you go to the support system of your company, you will find some amazing things. Do collaborate, you're not alone. Do find someone qualified to do your research, or hopefully, with this talk, maybe you are that person. And now let's move on to the final part. I promise this is the final part, which is about the good and the bad of UI. It's going to be like a small experiment. We will have one side with a good designer and one side with a bad designer. And you can pick your side. Okay. Let's keep that. Okay, the designer's mindset. The good one listens to everyone from decision makers, team members, and stakeholders, whereas the bad one judges and suggests solutions all the time. You can pick a side. The good one questions the status quo and digs deep to find out real problems and needs, whereas the bad one follows the rule of we've always done it that way and tries to fix the symptoms only. The good one takes time to ask about what is missing and is always uncertain about his understandings and designs, whereas the bad one follows his assumptions and is always certain about his work. The good one has many solutions and ideas, tries always to find issues and flaws in his work, whereas the bad one has only one idea to invest his time and effort to convince others with it, and is always defensive of his work. The good one loves working with others, revisits his thoughts, has something to learn from everyone that he meets, whereas the bad one loves to work alone, tries to confirm his thoughts, and thinks he knows everything. Now, the good one loves to be wrong and seeks feedback, and the bad one loves to be always right and seeks praise. Now, the good one leads, and the bad one follows. Thank you, and if you have any questions, please let me know.
What a great presentation and vibe, Eleftheria.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions for Eleftheria before we let her go? We have one over here.
Congrats for the presentation.
Thank you.
It was a great one. I work for a startup, so we have always faced the problem of, okay, we deliver a new feature. How do you evaluate whether people like it? Do you suggest following a programmatic approach and monitor invocations or whatever, or follow something like Hotjar and see the user activity?
Yeah, good question. So I would suggest if you can do a combination of those things are great. And you mentioned hot. Oh, okay. So it's a great product, and I think that if you can use it, absolutely do it. You will find some things that you maybe didn't think of. But if you can also take some input from your users, like again programmatically, that's a good solution. Another thing that I would also suggest, though, is maybe you could go one step back. So before throwing something out there, before doing that, just keep it internally, maybe give it in your own people, even if you are a small company or a startup company, and see how they are using the product. But these people shouldn't be developers or shouldn't be your friends, should be people that they don't really know you, so they will give you their honest feedback.
Any more questions? Eleftheria, thank you once more.
Thank you.